Hello everyone, this is Whitney, and I'm going to be sharing with you the presentation I've made for our final papers in the Dewey class. The topic I chose to address in my paper was applying Deweyan philosophy to the implementation of STEM instructional strategies in the 21st century classroom. So I wrote the paper with a problem in mind, and that problem is that there's a demand for highly qualified STEM graduate that exceeds our current ability to produce them. So there is a high demand based on the number of STEM jobs that are out there that require 21st century skills. And the problem is more or less that our students who are graduating from high school are underprepared and disinterested in pursuing STEM careers in college, and that perhaps has something to do with the fact that STEM instruction as a discipline is still somewhat ill-defined, which leads towards no clear path in implementation of STEM instruction. So I've proposed a solution, and the solution is the implementation of the STEM teacher actions that we developed here at the National Institute for STEM Education. In this paper, I have connected those STEM teacher actions to both the desired outcome of producing STEM literate citizens that are fully equipped with 21st century skills, as well as rested them on a theoretical foundation of Deweyan philosophy on teaching and learning. So first we have to define what we mean by STEM literacy, and I've borrowed this from Bybee, who wrote in 2013 that STEM literacy really is a set of skills that help you identify questions and problems in real life, explain the natural world, and draw evidence based on conclusions. That's a certain awareness of how STEM disciplines shape our material, intellectual, and cultural environments. It's understanding the characteristics of those four STEM disciplines as forms of human knowledge, inquiry, and design. And lastly, it's a willingness to engage in STEM-related issues and with the ideas of science, engineering, and mathematics as a constructive, concerned, and reflective citizen. Those 21st century skills, which we're familiar with, you might hear them called the 4 C's. These are from the Partnership for 21st Century Learning, and they write that those 4 C's are going to be critical thinking and problem solving, which is a certain type of thinking that causes the thinker to challenge their existing assumptions in order to make sense of new information or observations. So Dewey has the following to say about critical thinking. First, he says it's the sole direct path to enduring improvement in methods of instruction and learning consists in centering upon the conditions which exact, promote, and test thinking. Thinking is the method of intelligent learning, of learning that employs and rewards the mind. In other words, the instruction that we're working towards should be all about how to promote this kind of deep thinking. And then he also says the essence of critical thinking is suspended judgment, and the essence of this suspense is inquiry to determine the nature of the problem before proceeding to attempt at its solution. So in other words, we really want for our students to be able to stop their thinking process in order to think through all the merits of a problem before they start to design its solution. Another 21st century skill, the second C if you will, is communication. This is a mechanism for informal learning and for social construction of knowledge. So I love this quote by Dewey where he says there's all the difference in the world between having to say something and having something to say. So a student who has to say something is one who's standing up having to recite, for example, the 4 cardinal directions like I did in 5th grade. And then a student who has something to say is a student who has an idea, an opinion, a thought, an explanation for something. And those are what we really want to solicit in the classroom. He goes on to say that language in the classroom should be an outgrowth of the child's social desire to recount his experiences and get in return the experiences of others, directed always through contact with the facts and forces through which determine the truth communicated. So this back and forth of language helps us to get at the fact of the matter, and that's an important element of classroom communication. Taking a step beyond that type of communication, which just helps us get at the nitty-gritty, at the facts, is collaboration. And collaboration is just one single step beyond communication at that level, because this is where we're seeking to analyze each other's strengths and weaknesses, to evaluate the merit of the evidence that we use to support our claims, and then also it's an interdependency where we're depending on one another for our shared successes. So Dewey has this to say about transforming language by enlarging the pupil's vocabulary, rendering its terms more precise and accurate, and then forming habits of consecutive discourse. So we really want them engaged in an ongoing formative dialogue that helps us to reach the conceptual understanding together. And then also he warns teachers have a habit of monopolizing student discourse, which is a problem if we're to ever get at true collaboration. Creativity and innovation is the last C listed by the Partnership for 21st Century Learning. And these are not only products of student learning, but they should also be involved in the process. They are defining elements in determining the student's learning pathway, because it says to the teacher, says Dewey, such and such are the capacities, the fulfillments in truth and beauty and behavior open to these children. Now see to it day by day that the conditions are such that their own activities move inevitably in this direction towards such culmination of themselves. Let the child's nature fulfill its own destiny, revealed to you in whatever of science and art and industry the world now holds as its own. So I'm taking this quote and extending it into this creativity and innovation element, because to me it means that Dewey is giving us permission to let students show their own learning through engineering, through problem solving, through innovation, and that it's through that unique ability to demonstrate their own learning that we are letting each child fulfill their own destiny. So having that basis of STEM teacher of the 4 C's, those 21st century learning skills, I'd like to tie those together now with the STEM teacher actions that we developed. There are 3 domains that are broad, all-encompassing domains, and within those rest 15 teacher actions. I won't get into all 15 of those, but what I'd like to do now is I'd like to look at each domain in light of what Dewey would have to say, so that we can start to see how Dewey's writings paint a picture for instruction that incorporates these 15 teacher actions. So we'll start with domain 1. And in domain 1, we focus primarily on student-centered learning. So I'm borrowing from Dewey here what he writes about educative experiences. Dewey says we never educate directly but indirectly by means of the environment. Whether we permit chance environments to do the work or whether we design environments for the purpose makes a great difference. And any environment is a chance environment so far as its educative influence is concerned, unless it has been deliberately regulated with reference to its educative effect. In other words, the environment must be structured so that it is going to be educative for students with a variety of needs and from a variety of backgrounds. And if we pay no attention to the environment, then that's not educative. That's just a chance environment. So we have to pay close attention to that environment, shaping it so that it will be educative for all of our students. In domain 1, we also talk about individualized construction of knowledge and allowing for students to reach their own understandings at their own pace. So from Duckworth, teachers respect the meaning of our students are giving to the events that we share. So in other words, every student is going to have a different reaction to those classroom experiences that we design, and we need to let that happen because not all understandings are going to be reached simultaneously. So it's on the teacher to respect whatever meaning the students attach to that experience and then help them to correct it if need be. And also from Dewey, that is the teacher's role in this type of environment to focus the learner's activities by providing the direction, control, and guidance. And then lastly, that the teachers use their existing knowledge, their understandings of the content to help students make sense of their observations and experiences, and then obviously to make instructional decisions for each student. So inside domain 1, we're going to have several associated teacher actions. I've listed a couple here that I felt tied very nicely to the writing of Dewey and some of our other researchers. The first of those is improving classroom culture, action 1, and then connecting learning outside the classroom. Domain 2 talks a lot about inquiry and also some other approaches that help build scientific understanding. So in order to talk about this domain, I wanted to first define inquiry-based learning. According to the National Research Council, inquiry-based learning has 5 main characteristics. The learners are engaged with a question, they collect evidence, they develop an explanation, they evaluate those explanations, and lastly, they communicate and justify their explanations. This is rooted in constructivist theory, in which it is a teacher's job to help students assimilate new information into their pre-existing structures, correcting for inaccurate conceptualizations and adding new ones. And then I wanted to add this thing about observation because Dewey was big on observation in The Child in the Curriculum. And he's talking about the purpose of observation, that pupils learn to observe for the sake of finding out what sort of perplexity confronts them, inferring hypothetical explanations for the puzzling features that observation reveals, and then testing the ideas thus suggested. So I felt like that all tied together pretty nicely into the teacher actions that are inside Domain 2, which include implementing inquiry, addressing student misconceptions, and facilitating questioning and discourse, all important elements in that inquiry-based learning approach and constructivist learning. Lastly, in Domain 3, we talk a lot about those practices which are unique to the scientific endeavor, tying in the work of scientists and the work of engineers. It was important here to define what is meant by science. And Dewey has a beautiful quote there, that by science is meant, as already stated, that knowledge which is the outcome of methods of observation, reflection, and testing which are deliberately adopted to secure a settled, assured subject matter. And then furthermore, in 2016, Appying and Yeager talk about how science includes the process of construction of explanations about scientific phenomena through exploration of the natural world. So these students, in order to be doing science, really should be making observations, they should be doing testing, and they should be coming up with explanations, and then judging the merits and weaknesses of the explanations as well. Because the scientific and engineering practices are so important to society at large, I knew Dewey would have something to say about that. So I've tied it here to the fact that STEM classrooms can be an embryonic version of society, putting students to work at solving real-world problems. Not only that, but the research also tells us that science teachers should engage students in the work of scientists and engineers by immersing them in authentic scientific processes. Some of the teacher actions that are associated with Domain 3 are cultivating scientific investigations, developing engineering solutions, and promoting scientific argumentation. So if we want to go back to the purpose of my paper, my paper was really designed to help propose a solution that would remedy the discrepancy between the demand for STEM graduates and the number that we are producing. And that really rests with the STEM teacher. And so the STEM teacher has a duty to fulfill those responsibilities of producing students who have those 21st century skills and productive habits of mind, according to Dewey. So the STEM teacher has to allow students to investigate their own questions of inquiry, tying together their interests, motivations, and real-life experiences, acting as facilitator and helping each individual student reach his or her own potential. And in order to do that, we have this list of 15 teacher actions that fall under 3 domains that are rooted in best practice and Deweyan philosophy. There's my references. Thank you.